Good evening, ladies, and welcome to another edition of Torah Anytime, and for joining us here at Ohel Sarah. We're so happy that you're back, so happy that you're attending the classes on Shalom Bayit. We are now proceeding forward with our Shalom Bayit series up to Criticism and Arguments Part 2. Now, until now, we learned how we could learn to accept criticism. But now we have to learn how to give criticism. So ask yourselves the following question. What's the objective behind criticism? The objective is to correct a person when he's veered away from his own goals. If you remember, before you started dating, you were already envisioning the kind of home that you want to build with your husband, the kind of spiritual and religious observance that you want to achieve together with him, how the household is going to run, how the children are going to be educated. These are some of the subjects that are addressed when you're dating a guy. So many couples, unfortunately, do not discuss these very relevant issues when they're dating, and the main concern is if there's a chemistry between them, if they're getting along, and of course if the price is right. Then they get married and neither of them really know what the other's intentions are concerning life after marriage, or what each other's strengths and weaknesses really are when it concerns running a Jewish home. So it's extremely important to discuss the kind of home that you want to build when dating. That's to the single girls out there. You have to tell this to your sons and daughters. But anyhow, Chachamim tell us that it's 100% okay to offer criticism, and it's even a mitzvah to do so. Where in the Torah do we learn that it's a mitzvah? It says, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha velo tisa alav chet. Just like there's a command to put on tefillin, there's a command to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, there is a mitzvah to sit in the sukkah on Sukkot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to rebuke one another because Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lazeh, because we are all responsible for each other, and therefore we have to point things out to each other that are detrimental to our spiritual and physical existence. Am Yisrael is one body. When someone steps on your toe, your entire body feels it. Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. Now for our purpose today, the word amitecha is going to refer to your husband and to you. A husband and a wife, we said the previous class, must give tochacha to one another. It's a mitzvah. But remember the rest of the pasuk. Velo tisa alav chet. Although there's a mitzvah to criticize when necessary, there's no mitzvah to degrade or make somebody feel badly. There's no mitzvah to embarrass someone as you're rebuking them. For example, you all came here today to listen to this class. Let's say that you managed to get your husband Shimon to join this class, which I don't give to men, by the way. I don't lecture to men and women together, but just for our purpose now, for our sake today, as an example, let's say you managed to get your husband Shimon to join this class, and the only reason he did is because you threatened him that he better or else. So poor Shimon is sitting here and he's exhausted. He hears me speaking, and it's quite a long class. And slowly but surely, Shimon begins to disconnect from this world that we call Earth, and he drifts off into outer space. You watch him from the corner of your eye, waiting for the moment when his eyes are going to close shut, and then boom, you elbow the guy and you whisper quite loudly, Shimon, get up. You came here to sleep or you came here to learn? I knew you'd fall asleep. You don't fall asleep when you're watching your football game. You don't fall asleep when you're watching your baseball game. You're embarrassing me, you know? It's embarrassing. Get up. Poor Shimon wakes up completely disoriented. 100 pairs of eyes are staring at him. He doesn't know what to do from the embarrassment. Ladies, you're right. He should not have come if he was exhausted and knew that he might fall asleep sitting on that chair. But why embarrass him in front of everybody? Of course you have to point at the fact that he's in the middle of an important lecture and that he should try and stay awake. But velo tisa alav chet. You can't make him feel like 2 cents. Chachamim tell us that in the same way there's a mitzvah not to keep quiet when you see an indiscretion. There's a mitzvah to be silent as well at times. If you must criticize, but doing so will embarrass and shame him, then you should rather be silent and not say a word. Because if you shame him, you didn't do a mitzvah, you did an avera, you did a sin. So although HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands us to rebuke one another, but he didn't give us permission to put each other down, to degrade each other. And now we're discussing, obviously, destructive criticism. Bear in mind that destructive criticism only creates the opposite results of what you had in mind to accomplish. Now, how would you know if your criticism had negative effects? Because not only did the person you criticized not accept your criticism, but even more than this, he was hurt from it and he left the room in tears, or a battle ensued as a result of the criticism. And now what happened is that you're both standing on opposite sides of the field as enemies and not friends. When this happens, the problem is most likely in the manner in which you offered the rebuke. A woman once told me, I'm trying to understand what happened here. I mean, I wanted to point something out to my husband, and guess what happened? He went off on me, and I ended up walking out of that room in tears. Look what happened. I approached him about something that was to his benefit, and I ended up the bad guy. I walked away crying. So I told her, he's not the problem. The problem is probably in the way that you approached him, because if your criticism didn't yield the proper results, it's usually a sign that the criticism you offered was not constructive. So ladies, we're now going to learn what not to do, and then we'll learn how to offer a constructive criticism. Rule number 1 is not to give too much criticism too often. It's not going to yield positive results. A person might be willing to hear your criticism, but not all day, not all the time, not all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your husband might be willing to hear you out, but not all day and not with such a negative intonation. You should know that too much criticism builds a resistance in a person. One of my Talmidot's husband once called me up and he says, look, Rabanit, I heard one of your lectures on Shalom Bayit, and you said that a man should devote at least 1 hour a day to sit and talk with his wife. You said that, right? So I said, right, I said that. And he said, well, I can't do what you requested. I'm sorry, I can't. So I said, why not? He says, well, I try doing what you're telling me to do. I sit down to talk to her. We start to talk, about why frogs are green and why the moon appears so close to the earth. All those things she wants to talk about. I don't know. I try to discuss mundane things. And how does the discussion end? With some kind of criticism that usually goes back to the issue of my mother and all the things I do wrong. Every time I try to sit with this woman, at some point in the conversation, she takes out her M16 and she fires away at me. And I walk away feeling very wounded, very hurt. She could never end a conversation benachat ruach. I always have to hear about how I have to change and how I have to work on my midot. In all honesty, I don't enjoy sitting down to talk to her. At this point, in all honesty, I resent sitting down to talk to her. Ladies, this husband is correct in feeling the way he does. Try and ask yourself if there are times you're like this woman. Many women ask, how come he doesn't like to sit and talk to me? You know why? Because you make him feel like he's always in front of a firing squad. That's why. And then you want to know why he doesn't respond. He doesn't respond to you because you just killed the poor guy. Does a dead man talk? Does a dead man have a reaction? It's hard for him to talk because talking turns into an unpleasant circumstance. If your husband is already showing interest in you and taking the time to have a conversation, why would you choose to talk about unpleasant things? So how do you offer criticism in a positive way? There is a general rule in Torah that you should all know and you should all remember. It says, Le'olam teheh smol docha ve'yamin mekarevet, which means always engage in a way where the left hand pushes away, but the right hand brings closer. And left obviously refers to criticism. Right refers to compliments, encouragement. Generally speaking, ladies, the left hand of a person's body is usually, Chachamim say, the weaker hand. It's not the stronger hand. The right hand is generally the stronger hand. So notice the way in which the Torah states the pasuk. Le'olam teheh smol docha. When you're criticizing someone, you have to offer the criticism in a gentle way as if you are using your left hand, which means weak, in a weak way, meaning not so strong. And when you're finished criticizing, don't forget to do the second part of the pasuk, ve'yamin mekarevet. Don't forget to offer a few words of encouragement, offer some compliments so that the person walks away feeling good. If Chachamim say that the weaker hand is criticism and the stronger hand is encouragement and compliments, then we pretty much have a percentage that we could work with now. It's basically 20% criticism and 80% compliments. When you go according to this calculation, most often the criticism will be accepted and even appreciated. If we're really honest with ourselves, we'd have to admit that in most homes, we hear more criticism than we do compliments. In many homes, the ratio is 99.9% criticism and 0.1% encouragement and compliments. And the compliments are usually distributed once a year on that person's birthday. Miskin. What was the last compliment you received from your husband? A year ago? You know, it's when you asked him, how's the soup? And he says, not bad, not bad. A year ago. You know what? The Rambam, alav shalom, asks, how can you fix something that's bent out of shape? How do you straighten a bent piece of metal? How do you correct an incorrect path of thinking? He states the following. You bend the piece of metal to the complete opposite, and you'll notice that slowly, slowly begins to bend back to the middle and straightens itself out. The Rambam explains that someone whose way of thinking is bent out of shape and he has to get back to a normal path, he has to go to the opposite extreme, and eventually he'll come back to some point in the middle. That's how you correct bad midot. Not talking about good midot, bad midot. For example, if somebody has a stingy nature, how does he correct it? The Rambam says, to cure such an extreme case of stinginess, you would have to go to the opposite extreme and be extremely generous. After 2 months, hopefully, maybe, you'll come back to some middle point and normalize yourself. So ladies, I'm going to give you all homework, because our generation is the generation of criticism and negativity. Your assignment is to offer only compliments and zero criticism for the next 2 days until we meet again. 2 days. Okay? Not 2 weeks, 2 days. Really, I make it 2 weeks, but since we're meeting again, I want to see how the 2 days worked. You know, a lady's husband once told me, how do you want me to do this? My wife annoys me. She's seriously annoying. How do you want me to just compliment her when she annoys me? I told him, find something good about her annoying nature. Tell her, Miriam, you're an amazing annoyer. Nobody annoys like you. Find something. Ladies, I'm asking you to try and offer up only compliments in your house for the next 2 days. Before you go to sleep, turn to your husband and say, Shimon, I just wanted you to know that there's nobody like you in this entire world. Do it, I'm telling you. Then in the morning, call him up at work and say, Shimon? He'll say, yes. Then you say, I love the way you say yes. He's going to love it, I'm telling you. Send him a text message in the middle of the afternoon. You know what I'm saying? Tell him, Shimon, I don't know what mitzvah I did in this lifetime to merit to have such a husband like you. What did I do? I'm telling you, ladies, if you keep this up for 2 days, let alone a week, you're going to see your husband running back home to you in slow motion like those movies in Hollywood. Try it, see it, it's going to work. 2 days straight of compliments and only compliments. Not once a day, several times a day. And after you've managed to go through 2 days of giving only compliments, eventually you'll come back to some middle point. What's the middle point in our case? 20% criticism and 80% compliments. This is the normal way. As a side point, you should know that if you only distribute compliments, that's also not so good. In the same way that only giving criticism isn't so healthy. The proper balance of criticism versus compliments in a home should basically be 20% criticism, 80% compliments. So now that we have our homework for the next few days, we can move on to point number 2. Before we do, I'm going to reiterate point number 1, which is that too much criticism creates resentment in a spouse. Point number 2, tip number 2, is that the manner in which you speak, your tone of voice, if it's a tone that's degrading, it will create distance and bitterness. A person is willing to accept criticism when it's told to him in a respectful manner. When criticism is dished out in a degrading way, a person tends to tense up and closes up. If you want your words to be heard, you have to utter them in a respectful manner. You should never, as a couple, degrade or disparage one another. A wife never tells a husband, and a husband never tells his wife the following words. Come here, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here. Come here, I want to tell you something. Come here. Boy, 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 boy. Never. Those words already create tension. You never tell a spouse, boy, 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 come here, come here. I want to tell you you're a 0 and that you're a loser. Ay, ay, ay. This is a big time no-no. It's deeply offensive. Criticism has to be offered from a place of mutual respect. What does that mean? The intonation in your voice has to be respectful and not degrading. This is why Shlomo HaMelech Alav Shalom said, and gave us actually an amazing piece of advice. He said, Lashon raka teshaber garem. A soft tongue can break the strongest bone. If you want to break the stubbornness or pride or even strength, unnecessary strength, not healthy strength of the other person, you don't put on your boxing gloves and get ready to knock him out in the ring. Because when you're going to step into that ring, your opponent might just be the one who's stronger than you. This is not the method by which to argue or give criticism. Lashon raka teshaber garem means that when you want to break that unhealthy strength, power, I'm saying, or stubbornness of the other person, you have to address them in a soft and refined manner. You have to speak to the person in a very flowery language. Smile when you're speaking to the other person. Offer sweet words. And not only, what's going to happen is not only will that person accept your criticism and possibly change his ways, but he's going to love you for it. This is what we learned from Shlomo HaMelech. The Rambam, by the way, gives advice to the man. And he says, when a man speaks to his wife, he should speak to her in a gentle way. Your wife, to the men out there, your wife will accept your criticism when you address her with respect and with gentleness. But when you speak with her in an angry way, and you grit your teeth and your veins are popping out of your forehead, or when you speak to her in a business-like manner. I mean, I know some guys, they talk to their wife, Kiro, they're now in a business meeting, and when the woman wants to say something, because women like to talk, he says, I didn't ask you that question, I asked you this question. And if I want to answer something else, I'm not allowed to? Hello? When you do these kinds of things, not only will she never hear your words, she'll begin to resent you in a way that will lead to a situation where she won't be able to stand your presence. The men have to put a sticker on their books, on their attaché cases, in the mirrors of their cars, I don't know where, on their cell phones, wherever else they can, which reads the following. When you yell, people hear you. When you speak, people understand you. When you smile, people love you. When you're screaming, there's no doubt that people hear you, but nobody wants to listen to your words. They just want you to finish your rantings so that you should leave. But when you speak calmly, you're going to notice that not only does everyone want to listen to you, they all surround you because they're interested in what you're about to say. And when you smile, you hear the children saying, Abba, we love you. Everyone in the house shows their love for you and loves when you're around, when you're smiling and happy and speak in a refined and calm manner. That's what Shlomo HaMelech said. Lashon raka teshaber garem. You should speak to each other in a calm and respectful manner. And the Chachamim gave a classic example of this. Chachamim tell us that the one day that creates the most tension between a man and his wife in their house is on Erev Yom Shishi, on Erev Shabbat Kodesh, Friday afternoon before the Zman. When Erev Shabbat rolls around, the barometer of stress in the house rises. We all know this. An hour before Shabbat starts, our husband is running around and yelling that nothing is ready, and he gives the wife a very hurtful glance with his eyes like, why isn't that ready? Why isn't that ready? The children are stirring up trouble. The wife is nagging. This is what Erev Shabbat, unfortunately, looks like in some of our homes. Now, 20 minutes before candle lighting, the stress levels in the home reach their peak. Why? Every woman knows that before you transfer the cholent from the fire onto the blech, I mean, I don't know about every woman, but at least the Sephardi women know, you have to give the pot a little shake so that whatever's in the pot is going to cook evenly throughout the Shabbat. Okay? Giving you an example. So you put the pot on the blech, and then you move to your last minute preparations on Shabbat. Suddenly, you hear your little son singing from the kitchen, Oga, Oga, Oga. And you're thinking, what an adorable little boy I have. He's so cute, he's adorable, I want to pinch his cheeks. But then as you continue to hear your son's orchestral voice coming from the kitchen, you suddenly remember. And every mother knows that if the child is too quiet or sings too much, something's going on that may not be so great. You run to the kitchen and you don't believe what your eyes see. You see your 4-year-old son on a stool next to the cholent pot, slowly pouring hot cocoa, milchiga hot cocoa, from his bottle into the pot, and he's singing, Oga, Oga, Oga. Oh my God, the cholent is ruined. Everything's treif now. You've got milk and meat in the same pot. What a balagan. You let out such a scream, that little boy gets so scared, he says, Shema Yisrael, and he jumps into the pot. We all know the tension that takes place on Friday afternoons before Shabbat. Now, interestingly, the rabbis instituted a tefillah that men generally recite on Erev Shabbat, which actually reminds them of 3 things that they have to make sure we're taking care of before Shabbat. The first thing is that the man has to ask his wife, my dear wife, is the food ready? My dear children, did you make sure the eruv is still valid? My dear wife, are the candles lit? Now let's go back to your little Mozart who's busy pouring the contents of his bottle into the chilled pot. Your husband comes over to you in the middle of all this balagan, and with frustration and his voice he screams, is the food ready? Is the eruv up? Did you light the candles? What does everybody feel like telling that guy? Just go to shul already because you're making matters worse, and while you're at it, change your tie because it has a stain on it. Go. If a man approaches his wife in such a way on Erev Shabbat, his words will never be heeded. Chachamim advise a man to speak to his household on Erev Shabbat in a calm manner so that everyone in the home will accept his words. When you speak with calmness, you manage to calm the entire household, men out there. The best situation, of course, would be that if instead of talking too much, guys, you're aware enough to survey the scene and respond without too many words. You see the kid with a bottle of cocoa in his hands. You see your wife is running after him. Obviously something happened. Instead of running after her and she's running after the kid, and you say, oh, my dear wife, is the food ready? The candles lit? Hello? Why don't you grab the kid and help her? Ask her, what happened? And when she tells you what happened, says, oh, wow, I can't believe it. Don't worry about anything. I'm here. Shimon is here. You tell her, you finish getting ready. I'm going to take care of little Mozart. And then when I get to shul, I'm going to ask the rabbi what to do about the cholent. That's what you should be doing. That's what a man should be doing. When you speak in a calm and helpful manner, even when there's tension and stress in the air, it alleviates matters and it calms everybody else around you. Now, another point I want to make concerning destructive criticism, and I'm going to share a story that I heard from a rabbi in Israel who counsels couples, and he once spoke to us about a situation that he once dealt with. So I'm just giving over his words, where he said that one day he received a phone call from a colleague who said to him, Rabbi, I'm sending you a couple who's been to almost every marriage counselor in all of Israel, and all those marriage counselors have failed. So the rabbi asked his friend, well, why do you think that if everybody failed, that I'm going to be successful? And the friend said, really, I don't know, but you're my last hope. Either you're going to succeed and you're going to make shalom bayit, or this couple will unfortunately have to get divorced. And before he hung up, the friend added the following. He says, Rabbi, but wait, before you go, I have to tell you something. I just want to give you a heads up that when you see the husband, you're going to see that he's extremely put together, neat, good looking, well dressed. He speaks very clearly and eloquently. He's extremely poised. He's very intelligent, well spoken. But the wife, she's not the smartest. She's got a little screw that's somewhat loose. So what could you do? Okay, the rabbi agrees to this couple coming, and they come to the house that night. And when that rabbi opened the door, it seemed like this friend who he spoke to earlier was not exaggerating. Standing there in front of him was a very good-looking guy, extremely well-dressed from head to toe. His glasses were so clean you couldn't tell he was wearing anything. It looked like there was just a frame without glasses. That's how clean they were. And the guy says in the most poised manner, good evening, are you Rabbi so-and-so? He says, yes. He says, we're here to meet with you. May we come in? He says, yeah, sure, come in. And he proceeds to walk in the most refined and confident manner, while his wife walked behind him with her head held down like this, like a miskena. Not kidding you, this is what he said. It looked like he was the king leading a downtrodden servant. Look at this. Or better yet, she looked like a little chick who got wet in the rain. And the rabbi proceeded to show them to a long couch in the living room, and he told them, you, sir, you could sit on this end, and you, ma'am, you could sit on the other end. At that point, the little chick perked up, and she said, if you don't mind, Rabbi, I'd like a separate chair. Ooh, a separate chair? It's that bad that she doesn't even want to sit with him on the same couch? No, but the rabbi was obliging, and he brought her a chair to sit on. And then he called the wife over, the rabbi called his wife, and the rabbi and the wife began to make small talk with this couple. And they asked them the usual introductory questions like, where are you from? How many years are you married? Where did you meet? How many kids do you have? Etc., etc. And then the rabbi said, okay, so, who wants to start? And the guy says, I'll start, but I ask that my wife not interrupt me. And indeed, she did not say a word while he spoke. And it bothered the rabbi that she didn't speak out, that she just sat there quietly like a tatale and let him go on and on and on. The guy was sitting there like Mr. Right and proceeded to list off in the most calculated and business-like manner a list of complaints that were daggers that could pierce any heart. It was as if he was in battle now and he was dropping bomb after bomb on this poor woman, on his wife. Now, ladies, by an average normal couple, by this point, after all those bombs coming down again and again and again, the woman would have already gotten up and protested. She would have said, what you're saying isn't true, and you're exaggerating, and how dare you speak about this way about me and embarrass me like this in front of the rabbi. You think you're perfect, you're not so perfect. But this woman, this poor woman, sat there like a fish. She didn't say a word the entire time. It was already getting to a point where the rabbi and his wife felt badly for her from all the degrading insults that were being thrown at her by Prince Charming. So the rabbi stopped him and he asked her, excuse me, ma'am, but is it true what he's saying about you? And she said, yes, nachon. And then the husband says, wait, I didn't finish yet. And he continues with his Declaration of Independence and then the Bill of Rights. And he was about to proceed to the Constitution, but the rabbi stopped him. And once again, he asked the wife, excuse me, ma'am, but is everything he's saying true? And again, she said, Zenachon, it's true. Now, if you were marriage counselors and this couple comes to you where the husband has so many complaints and the woman agrees that all those complaints are true, who would you have to counsel, him or her? Her. So the rabbi and his wife helped with whatever they could. They gave them homework, they met with them several times, they encouraged, they taught. And most often when this couple came, most of the work was focused on the woman because the husband would complain and she would agree with his complaints. She would say it's true. After 7 or 8 sessions like this, the husband told the rabbi, Rabbi, there's another problem I didn't tell you. So the rabbi said, what's the problem? Rabbi, she's also not normal. So the rabbi asked, well, what proof do you have that she's not normal? And the husband said, this woman has outbursts of hysteria that you wouldn't believe. She screams, she hollers, she tears at her hair, she gets so wild. We can't maintain a home like that. Lo normalit. And then the husband said something that must have triggered something in this lady. And suddenly this woman got up and she started to scream bloody murder, and she was shaking from her screaming. The rabbi and his wife were panic-stricken. They started to bring her water. They brought her a calming pill. They brought her another chair. Nothing helped this girl. She kept screaming and crying. She was in hysterics. What do you do in such a situation? The rabbi looks at the woman's husband as she's in her state of hysteria, miskena, and he's sitting there with a satisfied smirk, his hands folded. He's so happy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made this happen so that they could see how abnormal his wife really is. When the rabbi saw this, he didn't like it. This husband did not display an iota of compassion. Not a word of validation came out of this man's mouth. Not a tone of care in his voice. Nothing. He was all too happy that this was happening to this poor woman. So finally, after 15 minutes, when they finally managed to calm her down, obviously after such an outburst and her still shaking like this, they couldn't continue the session. Now, as this couple made their way out of the rabbi's house, the rabbi looked at his wife and he said to her, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" And she says, "I think so. You tell me what you're thinking. What are you thinking?" And the rabbi said, "You know who this lady's problem is? You know who made her this way? Her husband. Ladies, this man was busy tearing this woman apart bit by bit, and this was the result." The rabbi and his wife then decided that at the next session, they're going to turn their attention to him, not her, and they're going to deal with his issues. So the next week, this couple came, and as usual, they sat in their designated places, him on the couch, she on her chair. And the husband asked the rabbi, "Rabbi, so should I continue from the last time?" And the rabbi said, "No. Today, I'm the one who's going to lead the conversation." And the rabbi proceeded in the most gentle and refined way to try and point some things out to this man so that he could understand that he also has issues. Now, after 5 minutes of the rabbi talking, the man stops him and he says, Rabbi, stop, Atzor, stop right here. I see you're trying to focus on me, right? And the rabbi says, right. And the man says, well, then stop. Because there's got to be some kind of misunderstanding over here, because we didn't come here to talk about me. We came here to talk about her. So the rabbi said, well, excuse me, sir, but you know that every coin has two sides. It's not possible that one person is pure evil and the other one is just a tzaddik gamur. But the man kept insisting. He says, no, Rabbi, there's a misunderstanding over here. It's got to be cleared up from the get-go. You have to get this straight, Rabbi. We came here to talk about her. We did not come to talk about me. So the rabbi said, look, my dear friend, we spoke to your wife now for 7 weeks. I think now it's time that we spoke with you a little bit as well. But this man was extremely stubborn and he did not want to accept the rabbi's words. He sat there the whole time with his eyes pointed to the ceiling and ignored the rabbi and his wife the entire time. And then after the rabbi spoke, he didn't thank him for his time. And the rabbi did this without money. He didn't charge them all those weeks. This guy didn't even say thank you. He got up, turned his back to the rabbi, and he said to his wife, get up. We're leaving. He walked towards the door again with that smug confidence, and miskena, the ladies following him like a tatele. Okay, and the session came to an end. They never came back after that. And who knows if this couple stayed married or if they got divorced. For her sake, I hope they got divorced. But the rabbi told us in that lecture, when he told us that story, he told us the following. He said like this, he said, what I learned from this couple is a lesson of life. You don't cook your spouse over a low flame. You don't treat your relationship like a pot that's on top of a simmering flame, because you know what this man did to this woman? He drove her crazy. He said, if in front of me and my wife he put her down and degraded her in such a lonely manner, and she came to the point where she relinquished her sense of self and agreed to everything he said, you could imagine what takes place in their home. Ladies, this is an example of destructive criticism, because this man turned his wife into a zero. He destroyed her essence. She became a broken vessel. Guys, if you do this to your wives, it's an avera. It's a terrible avel. And ladies, if you do this to your husband, if you're constantly going to give your husband criticism, it's like leaving a pot over a simmering flame. Eventually, that pot is going to overflow, and good things will not come from such a situation. If you're going to spend 20 years giving criticism and barely giving compliments, your spouse is going to explode one day. Or worse, your spouse will become a robot where everything you tell them, they're going to agree to it because they've lost their sense of self. You know what an avera that is to do to a person? They'd just rather agree with you than go through the torture of being put down and degraded. Husbands and wives don't realize how much power they have to brainwash each other. Because when you give criticism on a constant basis, you're brainwashing the other person into thinking that everything you're saying is really true and that there's something seriously wrong with that person. When a person hears the words, "You're not so smart, you're not as pretty as you were, you're fat," if those words are said enough times, you're actually brainwashing that person into believing that all those things are true. Now, the truth is, even if all those things are true, you can't expect anything to change if a person believes them to be true. You're going to have a more positive outcome if you provide compliments that are going to push the person to become something he never thought possible to become. If your husband is not the sharpest tool in the shed, don't stop telling him how smart he is. You're going to notice that miraculously, given some time, he'll begin to behave in a smarter way. Now, he may not ever become the Gaon of Vilna, but he'll be better than he was. And men out there, your wife may have lost a little cheshek, a little feeling to look good. And maybe she's even unappealing to you at this point. But instead of telling her, "Oh, you could look better and you're not so pretty right now," why are you saying those things? Tell her how beautiful she is. Remind her of all those beautiful clothes that she wore when you were attracted to her. Buy her something nice. Tell her you can't wait to see her in it. Even if she won't look like that 20-year-old girl that you met 20 years ago, and you can't expect that she'll look that way, eventually she'll become appealing to you once again, because she will want to look good, not just for you, but because she believes she's beautiful, because her husband believes she is. People, you have to stop being each other's psychologists. Quite often when we criticize our partner, we don't realize how we can make them feel as if they're sitting down in front of a psychologist. Criticism has to be given in the most refined and loving of ways. Criticism is meant to build, not destroy. The greatest criticism you could give is the one that's wrapped in a compliment. What does that mean? Instead of telling your husband, "You know, you're so boring. Why don't you liven up a little bit? Let's go out. Let's be exciting." You tell him the following. You say, "You know, when you react with excitement, my heart leaps with joy and I'm so happy together with you. It makes me happy when you're full of excitement, because I love sharing that excitement with you, because it means if you're excited, something's making you happy, and I'm so happy to see you happy." What did you just tell your husband without putting him down? "My dear husband, I wish you could bring more excitement into this house, because it's hard for me to see a person with no vigor or zeal. The same holds true for a man. He has to also react to his wife in the right way and encourage her to be what he hopes, what he wants her to be. If it's to bring a little bit more excitement to the relationship, if it's to be more attentive to him, he has the power to make it happen if he chooses to speak to her the right way. We're going to end here, and we're going to continue with criticism part 3 in the next few days. I want to wish you all a good week filled with bracha and atzlacha bechol maaseh yadechem. We should be zeicha to see miracles upon miracles soon, bekarov mamash.